Welcome to the Whole Story podcast. This podcast series is focused on inspiring sustainability in agriculture, using the framework of the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, also known as the SDGs. Each week, our guests are invited to share their story and leave us with some practical tips for sustainability on farms. I'm Becks Smith, founder of The Whole Story, a B Corp certified social enterprise inspiring, facilitating and articulating holistic sustainability in agriculture. And this podcast has been brought to life in partnership with the incredible team at FMG, who are passionate about partnering with organisations like The Whole Story, so together we can support rural New Zealand. So whatever you're doing while listening to this episode, thanks for choosing us. The best way you can support our mahi is to follow and share the show on whatever app you're listening on, and I hope this episode leaves you inspired and excited about the bigger picture of sustainability in agriculture. Today on the Whole Story podcast, I catch up with Lance Gillespie from Pastured Poultry in the Manawatu. Lance has a background in dairy farming, but has been on a journey discovering biological farming practices, soil health, and the opportunity for integrating chickens into a livestock farming system. Lance is now basically full-time importing, selling, assembling and distributing chicken trailers to large-scale farmers and small block holders nationwide, with a little bit of soil coaching thrown in for good measure. So welcome along today, everybody. Today we've got with us Lance Gillespie. Now, Lance, I'd love you to tell us a bit about your story, your business, who you are, where you're farming and what you're farming.
Right. Thank you. Thank you, Becks, for the opportunity to have a chat this morning. It's nice to sit back with a cup of tea and feel a little bit relaxed as we step into this. So I am a man of many hats, like a number of us. I'm a husband, father, biological friendly farmer. I import mobile pastured poultry chicken equipment for farmers, and I facilitate the Manawatu Regen Ag Group. And then I coach a couple of clients in soil health along the way, so that keeps life pretty busy and pretty full. We live in the Manawatu. I was dairy farming for 17 years and moved off that property a couple of years ago to a smaller property. So now running beef cattle and a handful of chickens and do the chicken sheds and support farmers in their endeavours that way.
That's really cool. And you say a handful of chickens. How many chickens have you actually got yourself?
Oh, I've only got 30 at the moment, so not too many. I had 130 last year and cut back that side of it so I could concentrate on other things.
So I guess you touched on there lots of hats that you're involved in, and the work that The Whole Story does is based around holistic sustainability, and I think it's something that you can really relate to there, Lance. But I'd love to hear what the word sustainability means to you, because it's such a buzzword and it means so many different things to different people.
Yeah, absolutely. My thoughts around that is I take a slightly different slant on it, and I call it regeneration. I think of sustainability as sustaining where we're at, and I think of regeneration as moving forward and regenerating. And then there's the degeneration on the other side of it. I like to think of it as regenerating of life and soil and biology and everything within the soil and in the environment. So that's sort of how I look at it.
That's such an interesting conversation. I know we've had it before, and I've had it with lots of others as well, about the differentiation between sustainability and should we choose to just want things to stay the same as they are or to carry on status quo, or should we actually be wanting things to be better as a result of our impact on them? And so I'm sure it's a debate that I'll continue to have with many. But I think probably to add my lens on that is that the sustainability means that we must have a positive impact so that we can continue being involved in the industries that we're involved in. So it's more about not the practices staying the same or the outcomes staying the same, but the involvement with the industry or doing what we do. It's a really interesting discussion, but
Absolutely.
Either way, I think the sentiments are the same, aren't they? About really just doing the best we can, trying to improve, and as we discussed before we hit record, just evolving, growing, adapting, and learning to do better every day.
For sure.
You touched on a bit of your background there, your dairy farming background, and then into the portable chicken trailers. Tell us a little bit more about that transition. How did we go from dairy farming to chicken trailers?
Right, that's a good question. Well, I'll go back and start back at the beginning, a little bit further back than that. I grew up in the city in Palms North and moved to the country when I was 10. My mother had grown up on a farm. My father was a business retailer in town but knew his sons had a passion for farming. So that's sort of how we evolved into the farming world of it. And Mum and Dad had always been very supportive in what the kids wanted to do, so we're happy to support us in our endeavours. So partway along that journey, my brother and I had bought a dairy farm together, and we bought a dry stock farm, and then eventually we went our own ways and did our own things. So we were dairy farming in the northern Ruahine Ranges, farming at 680 metres above sea level, milking cows up there for 17 years. So it was a great lifestyle. It was a great place to bring the kids up, and it was a lovely community environment up there. So we did that, and partway through that journey, I started dabbling and thinking about what was known as biological farming back then, as opposed to the regenerative agriculture today. And on that journey, I'd met a guy that became my business partner in the chicken trailers, and he was my soil coach, and we sort of worked together in formulating plans for our farm. And one day we were standing in the paddock having a conversation, and he was telling me about the lunatic farmer. And I didn't really know much about the lunatic farmer back then, but I did a bit of research, and it turned out it was Joel Salatin from the US, and he was running pastured chickens on his farming operation over there. So Dennis and I started talking about this and thinking, well, why can't we do it here? There's an opportunity for us, and an opportunity to support farmers into adding diversity to their own farm businesses. So back in 2019, we started working with a company in Australia and started importing mobile chicken sheds. It was a sideline gig at the time, and it's sort of grown from there. And today it's basically my full-time job and farming a bit on the side. So that's sort of how we ended up in that. It's a lovely mix of running chickens and livestock, cattle, sheep, and it's a pleasure to see the chickens running around out in the farm behind the cattle. So that gives me a buzz. And now I can spend time coaching with farmers and helping them work out what's the right size chickens for their operation, help them work through it. Some of them are fairly green and don't know where to start, and some of them have been doing it for a number of years and wanted to add to their business.
Yeah, it's really cool. And I think maybe you could touch on then, what are some of the benefits of running chickens in your farm integrated with your livestock system?
For sure. I guess the main benefits are, they get out there and they're scratching and they're fossicking and they're scratching the poo apart. They're picking out some of the bugs that we may not want in the soil, the grass scrub and the priners, they don't mind eating them. And they're putting a bit of fertiliser back on the soil as we go. I certainly saw the benefits of the chickens pulling a cow poo apart. Within hours, the grass had been exposed to the surface again, so that you didn't end up with all these sort of dung patches everywhere. And I just love seeing the chickens sort of integrated with the livestock. We've got our chicken trailers. We've got them all over the country, actually. Up north, down south, everywhere in between. It's certainly creating quite a bit of interest. Some people can make their mind up in a week. They want to do something, and then some people might take 6 months. It's just a process you work through with people, and I've learned to have to be patient, and different people operate at different levels, and just sort of work with where people are at.
Yeah, it's meeting people where they are, isn't it?
Yeah. And their level of risk appetite, or are they close proximity to a town or somewhere where they can sell eggs at their gate? There's a myriad of things to consider, really.
Yeah, and so what are the size ranges of the different chicken trailers?
Well, actually, this morning I sold a 20-bird trailer to a guy up in Northland. So we do a 20, a 40, a 150, a 300, a 450, a 600, a 1,000-bird, and a 1,500-bird trailer.
1,500 birds is a lot of birds.
It is a lot of birds, yeah. And tomorrow I'm about to start building a 1,000-bird trailer for a local customer. That's going to be exciting, and it's going to be great to see that out on farm in the next wee while. So, we've got plenty of options to cater for different needs, and some people want them for their orchards so they can run chickens amongst their orchards, which I think is fantastic. So we work with them on that. And we've got lifestyle farmers that might want 40 hens and supply their neighbours, and we've got others that want something in between. So, catering to everybody, really.
Yeah, such a diverse range of people to be working with. Very interesting.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. And there's people out there that just want them to provide eggs for their farm staff too. So you get a bit of interest for them, which is great. And I was talking with a guy the other week, and he's got 40 staff in his pack house and that, and it's just another option for providing something for their team, really.
Yeah. No, and what a cool opportunity. I mean, with eggs at the moment being the price they are, talk about perks of the job.
Yes, exactly. That's right. For sure.
So I guess a side tangent then. I love to put people in the hot seat with this podcast. And I was wondering, Lance, if you could tell us your funniest story relating to farming or agriculture.
For sure, for sure. I've been thinking a little bit about this, and there's probably a number along the way, but the one that sticks out was probably 30 odd years ago now. My wife and I were living in the States, so we travelled a bit when we were younger, and we'd spent time in the UK and time in the States. And the guy I worked for sent me out on the 500 horse tractor with the field cultivator on, and he said, "Oh, turn left, turn right, head down this road, and second road on your left, there's the field." Well, I probably got a bit lost in that conversation somewhere along the way. I was heading down the road and I'd turned left, but I might have turned left on one road too soon or one road too late. And Farmer Brown was in his front lawn. He was mowing his lawns, and he was looking at me driving past, wondering what the hang I was doing. And I get down the road another couple of K, and of course I was approaching a rail bridge overpass, and I was supposed to go through the tunnel. Well, I got up to it. I thought, no way, this is going to fit through there. So the Farmer Brown back up the road, he knew what was going on, and he knew I wasn't going to get where I was going. But that was an embarrassing moment for me that sort of stuck out, and I always remember that, looking back at that guy on his lawnmower and wondering what the hell I was doing. So,
How'd you get out of that one?
Well, I guess I had to back it up a couple of K up the road and turn around and head out, and he was there chuckling away to himself.
Reminds me of, we did a bit of a stint farming in Cornwall and all the Cornish lanes, and geez, you got to know how to reverse around there. Jason would be pulling the big tractor with the big wagon on the back, and you get down and then you'd meet someone coming the other way and they'd just sit there and expect you to reverse. And so here he is reversing the old tractor with the trailer on the back. And gosh.
Exactly.
I can imagine you would have made that guy's day on his lawnmower.
Yeah, that's right.
He would have gone into smoke and been like, "You will never believe what I've just seen."
Right. Exactly.
Laugh and half.
Yeah, for sure.
Oh, very good. So I guess then touching back on your, and you can come at it from either angle actually, either the business or the smaller farming operation you've got. What do you see as some of the low-hanging fruit with regards to sustainability initiatives in your business?
I'd always sort of felt I'd been a bit of an early adopter in a number of different things, and I was thinking back to the dairy farming time, I was quite happily to be looking at different fertiliser inputs and that sort of thing. So I'd been dissolving urea back in the day for many years and adding biological stimulants. So that to me was an easy opportunity to reduce some cost of inputs and be working with the environment too. So that today, if I had to fit with the nitrogen caps, that wouldn't have fazed me because 30 units of N per year was never a problem. I was always recycling my bale wrap, so that was another easy one that sort of allowed it to be used for something else. I've been doing that since the inception of Plasback. But I think looking now, there's opportunities out there for us to be providing food to our local community. So that seems like a great opportunity where we can be working in that space too. So I'm sort of thinking a little bit about that. What could I add on my little block where I could be supporting and providing something, whether it's pumpkins that I can grow or garlic or eggs or whatever, So there's certainly opportunities out there for different people in their environments to be working sustainably within a community environment.
Yeah, and I think you've just touched on there two of the big key issues we've seen of late, isn't it? The cost of input prices. I mean, working in a low nitrogen environment at the moment, it's a really costly input. So, everything we can do to try and reduce those inputs, the better. But also that building that local food resiliency, because we've seen just the cost of living, the price of food coming in from overseas or outside, but also through the COVID pandemic, actually being able to get access to foods that we probably took for granted in the past. So building sort of local food resiliency networks is something that's, a great opportunity for anybody who's got a patch of land, I think.
Yes. And it's a lot about community connections to it. If someone's growing something else, then let's do a bit of bartering, a bit of swapping or whatever, isn't it,
Yeah.
Let's work with each other.
And so what's then exciting you about your businesses over the next 5 years?
I think that there's plenty of opportunities out there for us to be involved, and what's exciting me is working with farmers providing some solutions, whether it be with a soil coaching hat on or whether it be looking at chicken trailers and how they might fit into a business for people. They might have kids coming through and wanting to get involved in the farm, but they want to do something slightly different. So I think there's a lot of opportunity there, and that's exciting me to be having these conversations now. And I'm having them now with people that might not want something for 12 months, but the wheels are starting to turn and they're starting to think. So I'm really enjoying that space of providing an opportunity and working with guys there. So yeah, I think there's a lot to be excited about, even though, times are fairly tough out there for a lot of people. Everyone's sort of knuckling down, but people are looking for opportunities too.
Yeah, and probably touching on that, saying times are tough. I mean, things are moving at a pretty fast pace, and it seems like the avalanche of change is kind of overwhelming. How do you personally prevent that overwhelm or burnout or apathy and actually stand up to face the challenge and keep fighting the good fight day in, day out?
Yeah, that's a great question, and I think we can all put on a brave face, but underneath that we've got to be realistic with ourselves, and we've got to be honest and have honest conversations with ourselves about where we're at and where we're going, and have conversations with our partners and our team about things. What I do is, there's been times where I think, crikey, how are we going to get through this? Well, let's write a list and let's sort of write these things down on paper, and let's prioritise things that need doing and prioritise the things. And it certainly makes a big difference when you can start ticking a few things off and you can see it, rather than it all being stored up in your brain and not having it on paper. Even just to get it on paper certainly makes a big difference for me. I think there's a lot to be said about off-farm interests and getting out the farm gate and socialising and mixing with people. Last year, my daughter, she's a Pilates fitness instructor, personal trainer. She said, "Come along, Dad, come along. We're going to hop on a reformer machine." Well, I didn't know what the hang a reformer machine was in her Pilates studio. So now on a Monday night, there's 8 guys of us there, and it's just about guys hanging out and having a laugh. So that's really key. And I do another class on a Wednesday, and it's just meeting different people and hanging out with different people doing different things. We need to take these opportunities to get out of our environment and do different things. I volunteer with Triathlon New Zealand, officiating at triathlon events nationally, so that's some of my summertime gig, and that evolved from watching the kids being involved with it and thinking, well, I could add some value here, or I can do something. So putting back into the community in different ways, yeah, it's very rewarding, and it gets us meeting different people in a different space.
Yeah, there's something really important about being a part of something bigger than ourselves, and better off as us sort of being a part of it, isn't there?
Absolutely.
That real altruistic behaviour is so rewarding and can just help with that mindset piece, I think, when we get a bit bogged down in the weeds. And I'm interested as well in what you're saying about writing it down. I think there's that famous saying where you can't solve a problem in the same place it was created. So being able to get out of your head and get things down on paper, it's amazing the clarity it can bring. And it's amazing sometimes, though, how hard that is to do in the moment. You think you're so busy and it's spiraling in your head, and all you've got to do is pick up a pen and paper and write it down. But it just seems like the most foreign activity to do, because it feels pointless when you start. But as soon as you get it out on paper, it's amazing that different perspective that you can actually see.
Absolutely. And it's hard when you're at the coalface every day to set time aside to think about things. We can get easily bogged down in doing and not enough time working on it and putting effort into that respect when we know there's tasks that need doing all the time.
And working on yourself too. That's cool to hear you going to the Pilates studio. I think there's something really important in that, and I've been speaking to a lot of farmers recently around functional strength, like actually being able to look after ourselves in a way that keeps our bodies tuned so that we can actually go out and do a good job in our business.
Yes, totally.
Yeah, I think speaking from season 1 of the podcast, speaking to Kane Briscoe, you expect the All Blacks to train for their job. So we should be out training for our job. And farming's a physical job. So actually keeping yourself fit, keeping your core strong, it's actually really crucial to be able to, I guess, do what we do and build into that sustainability of our farm businesses.
Absolutely. I mean, at the end of the day, if we haven't got ourselves in the right shape, it's hard to function, isn't it? So, we've got to keep ourselves at peak performance to be able to work in our business.
Yeah, and I think about it too. I mean, you don't want to get to retirement age, whenever that might be in farming circles, and actually be too broken to enjoy it.
Yeah, Totally.
You want to keep your body in that state that you can, run around with your grandkids and be able to enjoy your retirement, not be broken from years of flogging your body without
Absolutely.
looking after it. So lots of good takeaways there. That was awesome. So an interesting one that I'd like to know is, what is the best piece of farming advice you've ever received?
Top of mind, pay your bills on time. But I think in our farming businesses, or in any business, it's all about relationships and building connections with people. And if we can be connected and communicate in a timely fashion with people, then it takes a lot of stress out of our job. Mm-hmm. I'm thinking about booking a truck to send a load of cattle away or whatever, or getting a load of fertiliser in. We don't want to have it arrive tomorrow without some planning. So simple things like that is just where we can communicate and where we can build relationships with people, that just helps us along the way and on our journey so much, I believe. And I was always a believer in, being organised in those respects. And that just takes some of the pressure out of the game when you've got a product on farm. You might not need it for 2 weeks, but hey, I've got it and I'm organised. That's some of the things I've been working on and picked up over the years from some advice I've been given.
Yeah, and I definitely agree there around it being a relationship game. And further to that, paying your bills on time. New Zealand's such a small community that if you get a bad reputation for perhaps not communicating with people, not paying the bills, or not having a good relationship with people, it's amazing where that can come back to bite you in the long run. So not burning those bridges along the way by just being a decent person who communicates. And
Absolutely. I must say, though, now that a lot of bills are internet received via email, that sometimes they do get a little bit lost in the system, and I have missed a few. Quite different when they always to turn up in the paper and you put them on a pile and that was your task. Well, now that you've got to sort of be organised in a different respect, don't you, to make sure you catch those emails.
The worst thing's when they automatically get diverted into junk and you don't even know they went that way. Yeah, I think... it's really interesting when you come down to it. It's all about that relationship piece, isn't it? Like how you just interact with people. It can make your life super hard or super easy.
Yeah, absolutely. Something else I wanted to touch on. I guess I'm fortunate to be married to a wonderful lady who works on mental resilience and our mental health. And some work I'd done with her over a few years ago was creating my core values. And I think that's so important that we've got our values nailed and we understand our whys, what we believe in and what we stand for, and that helps us guide our decisions on a daily basis. I reflect on my core values, and I call them the 2 F's and 3 C's. So family, fun, connection, community, and collaboration. So I think we've touched on all those sort of things today, which sit very highly for me. So, I encourage anyone to have our values and know who we are and what we stand for.
Anyone who knows me will know that I 100% agree with that. Knowing your values just adds so many benefits to your life, both from an operational point of view, but also from a mental resilience point of view. But decision making for me, I mean, you're a person as well with many hats on, and I'm sure that you make very clear and strategic decisions based on those values. And so for me, when opportunities come up or decisions have to be made, it's a lot easier when you've got a really good understanding of yourself and your core values and whether something aligns or not. And I don't lose as much sleep making decisions these days because I know that I'm holding true to myself. And I think it's a really important point you raise. And actually, in some of the work that I do with individual farmers, exactly that is getting people to explore their core values and actually the farm business's values and what it's there for, because it then allows them to not get stuck in the weeds and the noise so much, because it's, you've got a lot clearer pathway through if you know what you stand for and what's truly important to you in your farming business. Yeah, what a powerhouse duo, you two.
I'm very fortunate.
It's very cool. So how long did it take you to work through figuring out those core values, and do you refresh or change them at all, or are they always the same, or have they changed throughout your life's journey?
I probably started this work probably eight years ago and probably didn't understand the value of them so much. And then they probably resurfaced about 6 years ago and spent more time with looking at them. And yes, they do change. And I think it's something that, should be reviewed every couple of years and and work through that process and have a coach to sort of help you sort of nut out some of these things. It's a great process.
Mm.
Yeah.
No, I'd agree. And it's, actually one of the last farmer discussion groups I ran, we went through a core values process, and one of the attendees afterwards gave some feedback. It's the first time they'd actually gone through that process for themselves, and it just provided so much more clarity on a direction forward for the farm. And related to what we were talking to before, and that burnout and the overwhelm of what was going on, they could finally get a bit of clarity and see a path forward that was actually true to them and not so influenced by the outside noise. So yes, such a powerful exercise. So I echo that sentiment that people should do that work and have a wee play around with what their core values might be.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, so I know that you are very busy and you've certainly got a big job ahead of you with the 1,000-bird trailer to put together. So in that, I wonder if you could leave our listeners with one take-home tip for sustainability that people can go away with and implement on the ground.
For sure, it's a great question. It comes back to having our top paddock, our 6 inches between our ears, in a good space to be able to function daily. And we look at sustainability, well, that could be on farm, it could be within our own mindset. So that's my takeaway. If we can seek support and work on our mindset, well, that's certainly a great place that we need to be in. And it's more evident today than any other time, I think, with the pressures and challenges that life is throwing at many people.
And so I guess I'm going to extend on that question a little bit then, given your answer. What resources or where would you point people if they were going to go on this journey and they're going to say, right, I'm going to take on Lance's advice and I'm going to work on my top paddock? What resources would you point people in the direction of? And I'll put the links in the show notes if you've got any specific ones that you shout out.
Right. Am I allowed to give a plug for my wife?
You sure can. 100%.
So she specialises in mental health and well-being. So I guess finding someone that works in that space, even if it's just to have a conversation with someone in that area. Yeah, finding that connection to be connected with others is pretty paramount, particularly, when we're finding it a bit tough or we need some support in whatever we're doing.
Yeah. And do you have things that you do daily to keep in that right frame of mind?
I've got a chair sitting on my deck at 5 a.m. I try and sit on it and have my cup of tea and think about the day and start with a bit of quiet time, but some mornings lately it's been a bit cold to be sitting out on the deck. But no, I think it's, the exercise and getting out with other people that certainly created a happy space for me to be in at this point in time.
Yeah, I love that. Well, it's good to hear that you're in a happy space and that those tools that you're implementing are useful. And I'm hoping that some of our listeners can take those on board as well. And what an interesting conversation going from your background, the chicken trailers, the work you do in coaching with other farmers, and then just that real importance of people looking after their mental health and actually making sure they're resilient, both in farm systems but also in their own mental well-being. So, no, it's been a wonderful conversation, Lance, and I want to thank you so much for your generosity because I know I've really enjoyed it and I'm sure that people listening will have too. So thank you.
Cool. Thanks, Becks. Thanks for the opportunity to be here to chat. It's been great. Thank you.
Well, what an epic conversation with Lance. And I know I'm definitely keen to get one of the chicken trailers on our farm. Now I just want to highlight some of the sustainable development goals that came up in our conversation. Firstly, what we can't overlook is goal number 15, life on land, with Lance's passion for soil health and the biology within. He also covered off goal number 2, zero hunger, and goal number 11, sustainable cities and communities, which are reflected in his passion for local food security. Goal number 17, partnerships for the goals, was a really interesting one in this conversation. Lance reflected on the necessity to let our partners and our teams understand what's going on for us to help us be more resilient in the face of challenge. And last but not least, goal number 3, good health and well-being. Lance gets out to classes at his daughter's Pilates studio a couple of times a week, recognising not only the importance of physical exercise,
but also the power of social connections and just having a good old laugh.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Whole Story podcast. We really hope you enjoyed it and are feeling inspired and optimistic about putting sustainability into practice on farm. I have one last request for you before you go. Make sure, whatever platform you're listening to us on, that you hit follow and share the show or episodes with your friends, so that together we can grow our community and inspire sustainability in agriculture in Aotearoa, New Zealand. And thanks again to FMG for partnering with The Whole Story so that we could bring this podcast to life for you all to enjoy. Catch you next time.